What's good, people? How you doing tonight? You all right? My trusty Gamma Macchiato beside me. Sorry about getting started a little bit late. I told you I'd move these to 7, but apparently I was having some technical difficulties on this end. So I had to take a couple of minutes to sort of troubleshoot what was going on. I was getting a bad reading for bits. Let me see, frames per second. So when that happens, that's when you see things get a little bit glitchy on my end. Anywho, what's good with y'all tonight? How you doing? You feeling fine? I am decent. It is snowing here in Ohio. At least it was snowing a little bit earlier. Mike Jones! That's my brother, man. Hey, I'm getting up. We getting up tomorrow. It's going to be a good time. Anywho, yo, man, the subject of tonight that I want to get into, that we're going to explore with principles using the avatar perspective, is the subject of mental health. You know, oftentimes people, especially in my own experience, because my experience is so atypical, a lot of times people like to assume that somehow there's some sort of mental defect in me, or that somehow, I'm off my keister, I'm off my rocker, a few loose screws and whatnot. But it's simply not the case. And I want to explain to you in principles why. A lot of people, they get accused of being mentally defective when or if their way of reasoning doesn't sync up with convention or the ways in which those around them generally tend to process information in reality. And that just, because human concepts pertaining to all things intellectual and all things related to the brain is so nebulous and not sorted properly, a lot of people confuse things that don't reflect their inner story back to them with being crazy or nonsensical or arrogant or one of those things. So we'll get into that in just a second. Let's start off by explaining what mental instability is. All right. So what does it mean to be crazy? Crazy is what you call it when a person suffers from, for all intents and purposes, they suffer from psychosis. Psychosis is an inability to distinguish the internal narrative from reality, or what can be experienced, witnessed, and perceived independently of the individual's experience and the feelings and beliefs and meanings and symbols that they use to make sense of the world around them with. All right? So basically, a crazy person is a person who doesn't know the difference between what's happening in their mind and what's happening in the world around them. The two bleed together. That's basically what qualifies a person as being mentally defective. When you fail to recognize the difference between your experience in reality and reality itself, you're technically crazy. All right, so that sort of segues into how humans make sense of the world and how all viral parasitic species make sense of, their experience in reality. Humans run on stories. We run on stories, okay? So there are two main types of stories that humans run on. They have the internal narrative, which is the collection of meanings, stories, symbols, beliefs, habits, practices, attitudes, behaviors, outlooks, and allegiances and sociological treatments and effects that they collect throughout the course of their lives and seek to self-actualize through, which basically sums to the story they tell themselves about the world around them and their place and value within it. And then there's the shared story. That is what is generally held as fact by convention, the consensus of everyone around you. Okay? So there are two main stories. There's the inner story, and then there's the shared story. Okay? Now, what most people think of as sanity in society is when your inner story is synced up with the shared story. when your identity matches with and can sort of be integrated into and functionally assimilated into the greater story that sort of integrates and orchestrates interactions between individuals and groups of individuals, then you're sane, right? But if your inner story, it doesn't match the greater social story of the context you perform within, then you're considered to be defective. There should be a core, a sort of a baseline of normalcy between all individuals operating within a sociological field. There should be a baseline of shared understanding for the context, shared understanding for meanings, shared understandings for beliefs, and sociological treatments, habits, practices, and attitudes. There should be a baseline that all people are sort of tethered to, and that is how you determine whether or not you're sane in society. Are you attached to the greater story, or are you divorced from it? The big problem comes in, well, reality and stories are mutually exclusive things. Stories exist solely in idealism. They only exist inside the mind. The collections of stories that humans create and circulate among themselves and agree to, which incentivize and sort of orchestrate interactions between them, they only exist in the imagination. They don't exist in reality. So when you look at something like the value of money, right? The value of money it's a shared meaning. It's part of a story. Everybody agrees to this story, but in reality, money has no real value outside of what it can get humans to do. It has no power. You can't pay a shark to not eat you. You can't pay a bear to go and take out another bear for you. Money means nothing around. You can't pay the ocean to part for you so you can walk across. No matter how much money you collect, it is a story. It's a fucking story. Money is a story. People tell themselves stories about how potent they are all the time. And then they come across individuals or things that threaten their inner stories, and all of a sudden they have to go on the attack. They have to destroy. They have to invalidate. They have to prove that their inner story is reality, and that anything that doesn't conform to or yield to or recognize their inner story, they have to prove that it's wrong. They have to prove that it's defective. Which brings us back to the subject of mental health. How can you tell if your mind works properly? How can you tell if you consume, organize, process, and output information, ideas, and expressions cleanly and efficiently in real time? Well, I would say the very first thing that you need to be paying attention to is, well, what you all understand is reasoning. Reasoning is the process that I just explained to you. It's consuming, organizing, processing, and outputting information, ideas, and expressions cleanly and efficiently in real time. How good is your reasoning? Is your reasoning compromised by your desire to defend your inner story and or defend your identity? When your reasoning is compromised, when your reasoning ability is compromised by your desire to defend your identity and the meanings and beliefs that you've already agreed to, then you're fucking crazy. You're crazy. For instance, you have lots of people who swear by the scientific method. Scientific method is good if you actually employ the discipline itself. It gets very useful. But basically what it does is it serves to use perceptual parameters that we've come up with to determine what is most consistent with reality in the way of averages, in the way of scores. What happens if extraterrestrials show up tomorrow and show us that the systems that we've been using are inherently flawed? What then? Are you going to tell an extraterrestrial that they need to, that their technology isn't real unless we can figure out how to process it and make it conform to our scientific method? If you're crazy, you probably think that you can make an alien bow down to you and how you do things. If you're synced up with reality in your reasoning, which reasoning again is the using the mental faculties to figure out what is most consistent with reality. If you're reasoning and you're looking at them doing things that you can't do and demonstrating that they're exponentially more advanced than you in the way of understanding, then you fall back and you let them lead. Hey, you know better than me. I'm not crazy. You're smarter than me in the ways of technology and science. Maybe let me take a seat, let me take a knee, and pay attention to what the fuck you're doing, because obviously you got it. Insanity usually falls to narcissism. And this goes back to what I was talking about in the last video series. Hey, Brother Wayne, how you doing? In the last video series, so when it comes to this sort of figurehead of corrupt life forms, there's a sort of trinity figurehead, and narcissism, aggression, and competition, they are triune. They're inextricably bound. The more narcissistic you are, that is, the more addicted to self-idealizing you are, and the more lost you are in your inner narrative, is the more lost you are in the proverbial mirror. The more narcissistic you are, is the more you self-idealize and you're sold and get high on the idea of you. This makes you aggressive because anytime you come across anyone or anything that doesn't reflect you back to you, you get angry. You get triggered. You experience cognitive dissonance, which is the same phenomenon as humans refer to as aggression. Okay? And then enter competition. You have to make your story beat the perceived story of whatever doesn't say you're right. This is the way it works mechanically. So the more narcissistic you are, technically, is the more divorced from reality you become. And the more divorced from reality you become, is the more insane you become. Then you lose the ability to recognize and sync up with what's happening independent of your experience and of your feelings and your beliefs. Silly. Yo, man. So basically, mental health boils down to, can you tell the difference between what's happening independent of you and what's happening inside of you? You can get the best cognitive scientists on the planet to chime in on this one, and I guarantee you they don't have any discovery that can contradict what I'm saying. Again, reality is the phenomenon humans would rightfully refer to as God. I mention that because truth is what is consistent with reality. Honesty is the individual's will and effort and desire to recognize and sync up with reality, and reasoning is employing the mental faculties to determine what is most consistent with reality. It follows a chain, an unbreakable chain. It has absolutely nothing to do with your feelings and beliefs. The more narcissistic you are, the worse for wear your mental health is. The more you draw into the inner story, is the more you suffer. Let me explain something to y'all about the inner story. The shit is terrible. The inner story, it is terror. It's terror. You get 10% gratification from the inner story and 90% terror. The more you draw into the inner story is the more suspicious you become of others. The more envious you become of others. The more self-absorbed and selfish you become, the less you're able to experience a genuine sense of purpose and happiness in life. You see all these people out here with these billions and billions of dollars. They're ignorant to the state and condition of the world around them and all the people who are suffering and living hand to mouth so that they can win this little ideological contest wherein they capture the most resources and or the most liquid authority, which is what money is. Fundamentally divorced from reality. No sense of gratification because there's no cap to what that hunger, that appetite, that addiction. There's no cap to it. There's no cap to it. They consume and consume and consume, trying to satisfy a hunger that doesn't have a belly, trying to scratch an itch without a point to focus on. It's psychosis. It's insane. Who in their right mind could see starving children and prioritize acquiring money that they don't need over feeding the child? Who? It's insanity. But when you're in the inner story, all you want to do is compete. All you want to do is continue to enhance your identity. It'll make you do some really fucked up things. When you're lost in the inner story, you could literally be in a relationship with the most wonderful person imaginable. And you can turn them into the worst person in the world. Because you're not interacting with them in reality, you're interacting with them in a straw man you've created that only exists inside of your identity, only exists inside of your imagination. You ever see people come to my posts trying to fucking argue against me and shit like that? They never do well, but they're there to put me in my place. Let me know that I'm crazy and psychotic and that I don't have all the answers and that I don't know reality. Yeah. Right? But they come to me. Why? Because what I am and how I perform conflicts with their identity. You ever notice how aggressive they are? How competitive they are? How narcissistic they are? You try to reason, but they can't reason because they don't know how to process concepts. They don't know how to organize concepts and keep everything sort of in order so that we can just compare perspectives. The only thing they know how to do is compete. They have this inflated idea of how great they are, and they're of the opinion that they're going to show me how little I know, when in the grand scheme of things, the only thing they do is succeed in embarrassing themselves and showing how little they understand with this sort of narcissistic and competitive and aggressive approach to interacting with others. They think they're making sense. They think that they're making rational and logical arguments by simply espousing their feelings and beliefs. They can't tell the difference between a fact and a feeling. They can't tell the difference between truth and how they want to feel about themselves. They're psychotic. They behave in a psychotic fashion. You can witness it. You just go and read. They behave in a psychotic fashion. You look at this last president that we had or have, I don't know how this is all going to play out, but Mr. Trump. he was often accused of being a narcissist. My take on it is this. I don't know the man personally. I know that he was selected by individuals to perform a certain type of task. So I never got to know him on a personal level, but what I did see and what I could observe and witness independent of my feelings and beliefs about the man is that he never took responsibility for anything. He deflected away from everything that was attributed to him. He was a magnet for narcissists. He was a magnet for narcissists because he behaved in a narcissistic fashion. No accountability. Everything is blame rhetoric. Everything is this person's fault or that person's fault when something is going wrong. Everything is his doing when something is going right. That's narcissism. It's narcissism. Hands down. And he would say things that directly contradicted things he said before and never apologized for it or owned up to it. And I'm not saying this as a person who supported or didn't support him. I'm saying this as a person who was just observing things that could be witnessed and documented independently of my personal feelings and beliefs, or would-be personal feelings and beliefs. That's psychosis. If you can't own things you said, things that you are actually recorded as saying, if you can't own what you said that's played back to you for you to review, you're mentally defective. It's problematic. Which I don't want to get back to this point of mental health, right? So there are two different types of stories, and we were talking about this earlier. There are two different types of stories. There's the shared story, which is what's generally believed to be true and or consistent with reality within a given region or within a given group of individuals. And then there's the individual story, which all of these shared stories throughout the world and throughout cultures and social groups, they sort of feed into. So all of these shared stories, they pour into the inner story to help create this sort of identity. So you're of this belief system over here, you're this faith system, and you're this political party, and you went to this school, and you're this alma mater, and all of them form to sum the identity, right? All these different stories, they amalgamate to create the experiential vantage point as projected outward from the apperception. Now, problem is, what happens when you have conflicting stories going into the internal narrative? People's thinking starts to become paradoxical. Let's say that you get abused growing up. I got abused when I was growing up. Let's say that you get abused when you were growing up, right? And all of a sudden you have this wrathful, vengeful spirit in you that makes it so that you want to release your anger and frustrations into a perceivably weaker vessel, right? But then let's also say that you consider yourself to be, a diehard Christian or Muslim or something like that, right? So what does that create in you? How does that shape your apperception? Well, then all of a sudden you become a righteous judge. You look for people to judge and punish so that you are justified in releasing your anger and frustration into somebody. You become a walking paradox. Your heart, it's corrupt. You have this strong desire to hurt things for amusement and satisfaction, but you search for righteous guises to hide behind so that you can get away with doing it. So that you can just get away with doing it. You get a lot of people who sign up to be cops so that they can beat on people and kill people in order to work out their inner shit. Right? They're psychotic. In their stories, they're the protagonists. They're the good guys. In the shared stories among their respective communities and the social groups that they frequent and the echo chambers that they frequent, they're the good guys. In reality, the types of impacts that they make, they're nothing but corruption incarnate. Then, too, there's another point I want to get into with respect to the inner story versus the shared story. Everything boils down to fucking competition. So I want you to think about it like this. Look at somebody like, for instance, a serial killer. Well, serial killer is a protagonist in their mind. And again, when you're dealing with the ego, everything is sort of based in competition. So they've created a game in their mind where they're the good guy taking out bad guys. And they are the authority in this game. And they set the arbitrary rules for this game that they're trying to win at. And again, they're psychotic. They're lost in the internal narrative and fundamentally divorced from reality. They're not cognizant of the impacts that they're making on reality. The only thing that matters to them is winning in this game. Winning in this game. How do you improve mental health? Goes back to what the OG Jesus said. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. If the frame that I'm supplying for reality, truth, honesty, and reasoning is correct, and it is. How you escape from the prison of the inner story, the terror of the inner story, is by recognizing and syncing up with reality. You don't even have to think of reality as God. Just think of a reality as a system of phenomena and effects that exist mutually independent of how you feel or what you believe about it. You practice syncing up with reality. That's how you get out of depression. You know, a lot of people who I interact with, you know, they go through some pretty serious bouts with depression. And I go through depression sometimes myself. I mean, again, this is a fucking hard roll. Like, it's brutal sometimes. But it's like, you know, how you defeat depression is you recognize and sync up with reality. Something I tell people to do. I tell them to write out lists of things that they're going to accomplish through the course of the day. I tell them to start their day with exercise and things that they can accomplish so that they are paying attention to the type of impact that they make on reality and how reality responds in kind. I get them out of the inner story and get them focused on things that they have the power to affect in reality. And once they start realizing they have the power to affect things in reality, then all of a sudden they start paying attention more to what they have the power to influence in reality than they do on the inner story. You see, depression, it has to do with the story. That it has to do with your inner story. Depression, you can't be depressed if you're not living in this bubble of, woe is me, gaps me spleen. Nah. You living in the past with traumas that occurred to you. I've had some pretty gnarly traumas occur to me in my life, but you know what? I don't spend all my time in my inner story reflecting on all the pain that I went through. I try to see how I can impact reality right now, and that makes it so that it's like I don't get lost in that fucking prison, because I'm telling you, the inner story, it is abysmal. It is a beast. Once you get down in your inner story, fighting your way up out of there, it's a bitch and a half, man. It's rough. It's rough. You get down in that inner story, and this is something like, okay, so for instance, I was talking about relationships like a couple of weeks ago or a couple of days ago, and maybe even last week. But you talk about, you have when you start creating stories and meanings and labels inside your apperception, when you start, like, especially when you're dealing with other people, like say a significant other or something like that, then all of a sudden you start creating this version, this straw man of a person inside of your mind, and that person just gets worse and worse and worse, even if in reality they only treat you better and better and better. Inside the inner story, everyone is out to get you. Everything is out to destroy you. You have to walk on eggshells. You're always under threat. It's brutal. It's brutal. It's bad. Shit, I see not too many people that have chimed in tonight, but it's all good. Anybody out there, hey, how y'all doing? I appreciate you for rolling with your boy on this one. But basically, what it all boils down to is simply this. Your mental health is basically your ability to recognize and sync up with what can be observed and experienced independent of your feelings and beliefs, independent of what you tell yourself about the world around you and your place and value within it. It makes for adaptive reasoning. It makes for adaptive reasoning. If you can't process information in reality in real time because you waste all your time spending every waking moment in your identity, your mind starts to work slower. It works less efficiently. You burn through all of this data. You burn through all of this. You burn through tons of mental resources just trying to keep this stupid story intact. Fuck the story. Let go of the story. It's not real. Something will inevitably come along and change it. Something will inevitably come along and disrupt it and prove to you that it was never real to begin with. Why invest yourself in that to begin with? It's dumb. It's dumb. Brother, absurd the word. Love this man. Love this man. But this is the point, guys. You got to get out of your identity. It's a false temple. It's not real. It is a temple to a false idol that is you. Honesty. Easiest way to start being honest. Start with gratitude. Start by listing all the things, all the positive ways that you're impacted by reality and others every day. Start switching that shit around. Hey, man, this person did good by me. This person helped me. This person, I learned something today. I'm doing better than I was before. I'm advancing. I'm learning. I'm growing. I'm grateful. Start with that. Then start get honest about what you know and you don't know. The identity refuses to admit that it's wrong about anything. The identity refuses to admit it's wrong about anything. The ego, it's never wrong. Start making that motherfucker wrong. Hey, you know what? I don't know this. Let me find out. Hey, what I feel and believe, maybe it's not correct. Let me go and investigate and find something else out. I don't have all the answers. I'm an avatar, and the very first thing that I admit to people is I don't have all the fucking answers. People who can barely rub two mental nickels together think that they have everything figured out, because that's what vanity will do to you. It'll make you think that you know everything and that you're fit to go against people who know exponentially and understand exponentially more than you. Honesty. Start with honesty. You don't have to attack everyone who doesn't reflect your inner story back to you, or assume that they're wrong or defective, or try to compete against them in order to make your story beat theirs. Fall back and say, hey, maybe my story isn't right. Let me see if I can change it. Let me see if I can make it better. You humans. Self-idealizing. It's a bad look, man. It's leading you to a very, very bad place, I can tell you that much. But lo and behold, I genuinely love all of y'all. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your consideration. You know? Again, I don't know how much time I have left in this body, but I want to help as many people as I can while I'm here. You can reach me on social media. You already know where I'm at. You know, I'm on Facebook. Obviously, that's where I'm shooting this. And it's like, you know, I got the Instagram and YouTube and Medium. I just posted something to my Medium account the other day. Again, guys, I'm also on, you can join the Patreon family, Avatar Cycle XIII. And also you can, if you ever get any sort of appreciation from what I do and you just want to bless me with $1 here or $2. I mean, y'all do it to preachers and pastors, but the irony of that is just palpable. But anyway, yeah, man, it's like if you ever just say, hey, man, I appreciate what you do. Man, here's a little bit of love, Don. I appreciate that. Everything goes towards building this up to a larger platform so that I can reach as many people as I can before this leg of my journey is done. It's good coffee, even when it's cold. So, basically, monitor your mental health. The way you do that is by making sure that your feelings and beliefs don't get in the way of you considering, recognizing, interacting with and responding to what's happening in the world around you. That's how you make sure your mind stays healthy. It starts with honesty. It starts with gratitude. Honesty, gratitude. You know how you even build up gratitude? By being compassionate, by helping other people, by not making yourself the center of everything. You are not the star of reality. The more you make yourself the central focus of everything is the more miserable you become, regardless of how many resources you acquire. Stop focusing on you. When you stop focusing on you, you can see everything around you that gives you a reason to be grateful for yourself and for everything around you. So anywho, it's your man, Donald King. Let it. Let's see, I was going to, nope, can't get no vocals right now. Let it snow, let it snow. See, nope, see, not today. My sinuses have been bad since I've been back in Ohio. I don't know what's up with that. It's terrible. Anywho, yo, I appreciate y'all, man. I'm about to get off here, man. It's like I've run over a little bit, but you know, it's very important for people to start learning how to monitor their mental health, and especially for people who are sort of lost in the state of narcissism, to stop going around and calling everyone else narcissistic, and stop attacking people and trying to tear people down because they're not reflecting your inner story back to you. That is the very definition of narcissism. And the more that people go around here sort of convoluting meanings and making everything try to fit with and conform to their inner story, is the worse the world gets. Because everyone's running around like a fucking psychotic maniac. Everybody's trying to drag the entire world and all of reality into their inner story, and it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. Everything in reality cannot fit down into your tiny identity. You're going to have to set that shit down, sync up with reality, and all of that anxiety, all of that tension, all of that rage, all that animus and competitive spirit, it dissipates. It falls to the wayside. And you start becoming a better person. It's your man. I'm out. Hey, wait. We got somebody. Thank you, Brother Mike. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. Yo, hey, we getting up tomorrow, man. I love all y'all, man. My people. I appreciate you. Good night.